Alright, now it's hard to remember all the people in the story. Sometimes I get them mixed up. So we want to make sure we go over all the characters in the story about Esther. First one is Esther. Esther was the queen, right? And so on Purim, some girls will wear a princess crown or something like that to help remind them of it. Then there's her relative Mordecai. Mordecai was the good guy, and he wanted to follow God. So everybody remember Mordecai? Mordecai was the good guy. Then there was the king. Now the king was sort of not so much a good or a bad guy. He was just somebody in the middle. There was King Ahasuerus. That's a big name, isn't it? King Ahasuerus. But he was in charge of everybody. And then there was Haman. So when you hear his name, that's the time to get out the shaker, because he was the bad guy. He was a selfish, mean, stuck-up person and tried to kill a whole bunch of people. So when you hear the name Haman, you get out your Groggers or your shaker. Okay, so I'm going to tell the story. A long time ago, this is a true story, by the way. It's not a make-believe story. It's a true account. There was the king Ahasuerus. And he decided he wanted to have a contest to see who would be the next queen. So they sent out messages throughout all the kingdom about who would be one of the people to be in the contest. Esther was someone who was in the contest, and she didn't have any parents, at least that we know of. They might have died a long time ago before she ever got to Shushan the palace, so she didn't even have any parents. But even though she was very sad, she was also very beautiful, the Bible tells us. So she was in the contest, and eventually the king chose her to be the queen of the whole land. So they had a big ceremony, and the queen told everybody in the whole kingdom about how she was now the queen. But she didn't tell anyone, because her relative Mordecai said, don't tell anyone right now. Don't tell anyone that you're Jewish. So she didn't say anything, but she was the queen. Well, it wasn't much longer than there were some bad guys who were going to try to kill the king Ahasuerus. But Mordecai, the good guy, he overheard them and told the king Ahasuerus about it. So those people got in trouble, and King Ahasuerus was safe. And they recorded it in the big history book that they have, the big ledger they had for the kingdom. Well, a little bit later, we find that there was a person by the name of Haman. Someone who was very wealthy, very rich, and he was very influential. Well, the king decided that he wanted him to be in charge. But one day, as Haman as he got promoted, everyone else saw him and they thought, ooh, here is Haman. To him, and we're going to make a big deal. And Haman was a selfish person, and so he wanted everyone to make a big deal about him and bow down to him and say, "Ooh, aren't you wonderful? You're the most wonderful, and you're a powerful leader." And he really liked it. So there was one problem. When Haman walked by the court of the king, standing nearby was Mordecai. But Mordecai was not going to, he was going to treat everybody the same, and he wasn't going to bow down to this person just because everyone else thought they were important. He was only going to worship God. And so Mordecai didn't treat him any differently. Well, do you know what Haman did when he saw Mordecai and that he wouldn't bow down to him? He got very angry and he said, who does this person think they are? They're not making me feel special and important. And so he started feeling very angry. And wicked Haman said, I'm going to come up with a plan to get rid of this guy. I'll kill him. Now, we shouldn't do that. That's not right, is it? And so he came up with a plan. The plan was, we'll get rid of Mordecai and all the Jews. We'll do it all together and get rid of them all. And when he went to the king, he said to the king, hey, there's this person, Mordecai. He causes lots of problems. And there's the Jewish people. They're causing all kinds of problems in your kingdom. We don't need these kind of people around here. I'll give you a lot of money, and we can get rid of them all, if you think it's okay. And the king said, okay, that sounds good to me. When do you want to do it? And Mordecai said, I know, we'll cast lots. Or Haman said, we'll cast lots to find out which day. And so, I don't know if they used dice or what it was, but we'll roll the dice to see which month. And it was the 12th month. And then which day? I believe it was the 13th day of the 12th month. That's the one that came up, and it wasn't that far away. Oh no, what was going to happen? Are all the Jews going to be killed? That's what the law said, wasn't it? And you can't change the law once, you can't just say, well, we're not going to have that law anymore once it's started. So that's when Mordecai went to and sent a message to Queen Esther saying, it could be that if you don't say anything now is the time. I think you should say something that you're Jewish and see if you can deliver and save all of the Jewish people. And it could be that God has brought you to the kingdom for such a time as this. And so she said, if you will pray and fast with me, then I will go before the king. But it could be very dangerous, because if anyone goes before the king and the king hasn't asked for them, I could be killed. But if I go before the king and the king holds up the golden scepter, then I could live. So I don't know if I want to do this. But she said, if you pray and fast along with me, then I'll do it. And if I perish, if I die, then I die. But I think this is the right thing to do. I could save a lot of people's lives. So at the end of the 3 days, Esther put on her queenly robes and her crown, and she made the final decision, I'm going to go before the king. And what will happen? Will I die? Or will he let me ask him a question? So she got all of the things together. She stood there right before the king, and the servants were waiting to see what's going to happen. Is she going to die? We can't believe she's going to go before the king. Is she going to die, or will she live? And she stepped out there in front of the king, and the king saw her and raised up the golden scepter that he had, the rod that he had, and she then could live. And the king wondered, why is she coming over here? And she went all the way up to it and touched the end of the golden scepter. And the king said, what is it that you want? And I'll give you up to half the kingdom. I'll give you can ask for whatever you want. And I personally think she was kind of nervous. And so she said, I know, I'll put it off a day. And she said, I know, would you come to a banquet that I have prepared for Haman? And the king said, okay, I like parties, so I'll go to the party that you have. And so the king went, and Haman was there, and the king king said, now what is it that you want? Everybody wanted something from the king. And Esther probably was still kind of nervous and said, you know what? I don't know if I can ask him. So she said, I know, can you come to another party tomorrow? And the king said, sure, I love parties. So yes, we'll come to a party tomorrow. Well, on the way home, Haman saw the same person. He had been pretty happy at the party. He had been thinking, I'm so special. I'm at a party with the king and the queen and just me because I'm so important and special. But then Haman saw Mordecai, and Mordecai wouldn't bow to him again, and he got really mad, and he thought, that person won't ruin my whole day because I see him and he won't bow down to me. So he went home and he talked to his wife and said, I can't believe it. I was having a nice day and then I saw Mordecai and he got in the way and now I ruined my whole day. And she said, I know, why don't you hang him, kill him, make some really tall gallows, like 100 feet in the air, really, really tall, like that tall. And that way everybody can see. That's what happens if they mess with you. And wicked Haman wow, that's a great idea. Everybody will think that I'm important then, and then that'll get rid of Mordecai. So that's what I'll do. So he told some servants, go ahead and build them, and they were working hard all that day to build it. Well, that evening he went down to the party. There was the king, and there was the queen. And they had this nice meal, and they were enjoying themselves, and the king went and turned to Queen Esther and said, now what is it that you want? You must want something. And the queen realized, uh-oh, if I don't do something now, my relative Mordecai might be dead tomorrow. So I better do something. And so she said, I have one request. I only want one thing. Is that okay? All I want is my life. Is it okay if I live and my people that we live? When the king heard this, he thought, wait a minute, who's trying to kill the queen? And who's getting rid of all of her people? So that's what the king asked, said, wait, who is this? And the queen looked right over at wicked Haman and said, it's him. It's our enemy, Haman. Heard that, he was so upset, he stood up and he went out into the garden so he could cool down a little bit. And in the meantime, Haman went over and he was saying, look, don't kill me, don't kill me. And when the king came back in, he saw Haman who was there talking to the queen, and he thought that the king thought that Haman was trying to do hurtful things to the queen. And so the king, when he saw it, he said he got really upset, and the servants knew, uh-oh, that's it for him, and they covered his face with a cloth. And one of the servants said, I know what we can do, because he could tell the king wanted to get rid of the guy. And he said, I know what we'll be able to do, that Haman he built these gallows to hang Mordecai on them. Look, you can see them. And then the king said, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, let's hang him on those. And so out went wicked Haman. And he lost his life with the very same thing he was going to try to do to someone else. That very wicked thing happened to him. And so then what happened is, Mordecai, the good relative of Esther, was able to be a part of the government, and they were able to pass a second law that said that all the Jews could fight to defend themselves, and then instead of the 12th month and the 13th day being a sad day, it became a glad day when they were able to defend themselves. And so the Purim is about remembering how God delivered His people. And that's the story.